Okay, welcome to today's class. So we are going to look at the remaining part of fixed production overhead variance. Now, we discussed in last class fixed production overhead variance, where we look at three calculations: fixed production cost variance, fixed production overhead volume variance, and fixed production expenditure variance. We did calculations on it. Now, at the introduction of this fixed production overhead variance, I did tell you that fixed production overhead volume variance can be classified into two, and they are fixed production efficiency variance and fixed production capacity variance. So we are going to look at these two together. Now, I took them separately and identified the formula. If you want to calculate for fixed production overhead efficiency variance, the formula is standard hour minus actual hour times standard rate. If you want to calculate for fixed production overhead capacity variance, the formula is actual hour minus budgeted hour times standard rate. Now, looking at this, we'll take this question to buttress our point, which is practice question 5. A company budgeted 5,000 units of a standard product in year 1. The budgeted hours is 10,000 hours. The budgeted fixed production overhead is 40,000 naira. Now, we now move to actual section. The actual production was 5,200 in units and 10,250 hours of works, and fixed production overhead was 40,500. Calculate whatever, so that we were asked to calculate efficiency and overhead variance and capacity variance. So the first one we did was fixed production efficiency variance. Fixed production efficiency variance. The formula is standard hour minus actual hours times standard rate. Now, you have to find standard hour. How do we get our standard hour? Our standard hour will be 10,000 hours divided by 5,000 products. That was what they told us, that they budgeted 10,000 hours and they budgeted 5,000 units. So what is a standard hour per unit? The standard hour per unit will now be 2 hours. So standard hour per unit is 2 hours. So total standard hour will now be times actual units. Remember, standard is always applied on actual units. I always tell my students, standard is always applied on actual units. So this 5,002 is the actual units. So we now have standard hour to be 10,400 hours. Actual hour was already given to us in the question to be 10,450. Look at it. 10,000. Okay. Actual hour is 10,250. Actual hour is 10,250. So this will change my computation. Change 10,250. So you now substitute. If we substitute, we will have 10,400 minus 10,250. That will give us 150. So you can see that it is positive, so it's favorable. Times 4. 150 times 4 will give you 600. So it is 600. So since it is 600, the answer is favorable. I told you, once the one inside bracket is favorable, is positive, it is favorable. Now we come to fixed production capacity variance. Fixed production capacity variance is budgeted hour minus actual hour times standard rate. Now, our budgeted hour is 10,000 hours. In the question, we were told budgeted direct labor hours is 10,000 hours. So we come back here. So actual hour was given to us and it's 10,250. So we correct it. It's 10,250. So we'll come and effect it. 10,000 minus 10,250. So it will now give us 250 minus 250. So since the one in bracket is negative, it is adverse. So 250 times 4 will give you 1,000. 250 times 4 will give you 1000, and it is adverse. And I've told you why it is adverse. It is adverse because we have the one inside bracket to be what? Negative. We have the one inside bracket to be what? Negative. So with that, we continue. Now that is what the question requires, but I want to buttress a point. I say we can buttress the accuracy by computing the fixed production overhead volume variance. And the fixed production overhead volume variance has a formula. We did it in our last class. Standard hour minus budgeted hour times standard rate. Where standard hour is actually the same, which is 10,000 hours divided by 5,000 units times 5,200 will give us 10,400 hours, and standard rate is 400. So our budgeted hour remains 10,000. So we substitute, we have this. So you can see that our 400 in the bracket times 4 will give us 16. Why is it 16? Why is it favorable? Because you can see that the standard hour was higher than budgeted because our actual unit increased higher than budgeted. Let's go back to the question. Actual budgeted unit is 5,000. Actual unit is 5,200. So since it is higher, if actual unit is higher, that volume variance will be favorable. If it is lesser, it will be adverse. So looking at this, you can see that it is what? Favorable. Now if you add these two, they must give you that answer, which is 600 plus 600 times plus 1000 will give you 16. To give you 16. So here we have our budgeted is 10,000 and our actual is 10,250. It is favorable because the actual unit increased. That is why it is favorable. Actual unit increased. So once actual unit is higher and your actual hours is higher, is favorable because we can sell more, and as you sell more, you make more profit. So that is that for that. So causes of fixed overhead variance: lack of control of overhead, poor budgeting for overhead spending, unplanned increase or decrease in overhead spending. So we'll now look at sales variance. Sales variance is actually not part of the standard cost card. So sales variance arises from two things, and they are sales price variance and sales volume variance. How do we experience variance in sales price? For example, if we budgeted 10,000 naira per unit and we ended up selling the product at 9,500, you see that there is a variance between the actual price of 9,500 and the budgeted price of what? 10,000. It could be the other way around, where we budgeted that to sell the product at 10,000 and we ended up selling it at 11,500. So there is a variance. So that variance will be applied on actual units. Look at the formula here. The variance will be applied on actual units. So it is budgeted sales price minus actual sales price times actual quantity sold times actual quantity sold. So with this, we can now see that it is simple to calculate your sales price variance. I also gave the meaning of all those abbreviations. The notes will be made available to you, so we don't have any challenge. Now for 7.2, for sales volume variance, this arises where we budgeted to sell 10,000 units, 50,000 units, and we ended up selling 40,000 units. You see, there is a discrepancies in the volume we sold. So when we talk about volume, we are looking at units of output. So with these units of output, you see that it is quite easier to compute it. So we apply it on standard profit or standard contribution, depending on the cost system used in the organization. So now I identified the formula for sales volume variance: budgeted quantity sold minus actual quantity sold times standard profit times standard profit or contribution. So we will use profit If the companies operate standard absorption costing system, we will use contribution if the company operates standard marginal costing system. When we take a question on this, I will explain further. So we'll move down to reconciliation of budgeted profit and actual profit. I can always give you this, and we are expecting in this diet. Now, you are required as an accountant in practice to prepare a report to explain, or that will explain, why the budgeted is different from the actual. With this report, you can be able to tell managers why this is this and this is not this. So we have operating reports and others. We have format of operating statement. Now, I was able to bring out a format. The format is like this. You have your naira sign. So you now bring in your budgeted profit. So you must calculate your budgeted profit. You must also calculate your actual profit in your workings. When we take a full ICAN or ACCA question, you will see what I'm talking about. Now, when you calculate your budgeted profit, you have this. You also need to calculate your actual profit to have this. I hope you can see it. So you now start your reconciliation. Now, favorable will be added, while adverse will be deducted. So we'll come here. Sales price variance is adverse. So if it is adverse, remember adverse is always in brackets. You less. Sales volume variance is also adverse. You less. So you now have this. So you now come to cost variance. Now you have it in two sides. Favorable will be added together. Adverse will be added together. Direct material price, it is favorable. Direct material usage is favorable. Direct labor rate is adverse. Direct labor efficiency is adverse. Direct labor idle time is adverse. Variable production overhead is adverse. Variable production overhead efficiency is adverse. Fixed production overhead expenditure is favorable. Fixed production overhead efficiency is adverse. Fixed production overhead capacity is adverse. So when you add them together, you have total cost variance is 772 for favorable, 746 for adverse. This minus this will give you 26, which is plus, because your favorable is higher than your adverse. So you add this 26 to this value and it will give you this, and it will definitely be equal to actual profit. You must note closing stock are valued as standard cost per unit. Now when we take a question by weekend, I will explain better when we take a question that will solve everything we've been doing. So with this, I have introduced to you variance analysis. So we'll now be taking questions subsequently to buttress our point. Thank you, and do have a nice night.